being funny, can we just talk about Erica Kirk?
It's really polarizing.
Natalie is not a victim of that internalized patriarchy and the inner voice of religiosity because she utilizes it to her own gains. Ruby Frank was an influencer on YouTube, Channel 8 Passengers. It was all about wellness and family and parenting. And she is now sitting in prison for the most horrific child abuse.
Yeah.
We are comparing ourselves constantly to the people we see online. And we are going to them for advice. We are taking what they say. If they've got a big following, you may take what they say much more seriously. And it could be on a wide nature of topics. And we don't know who these people intrinsically are. And that is at the heart of Yesteryear for me, that performative point of being online.
Hello and welcome back to this week's podcast. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Chaya.
And before we start, I just want to take a moment on behalf of both of us to thank you all for listening. Whether you're on your commute to work, you're at home doing some, inane tasks, walking your dog, whatever it is that you are doing, we are so appreciative of the fact that you have made the time to listen to us today. So thank you so much.
And if you're enjoying listening, it would mean so much if you could subscribe, like, review, comment. We really do take any reviews, critical or otherwise, into account. There have been some messages about me screeching too loudly. I formally apologise.
I'm working on my mic discipline.
And I'm working on not screeching in your ears. So thank you. And please do subscribe. This week, we are talking about a book that is literally everywhere.
I've got
trains, planes, every podcast, every book club. I would say that we chose this a long time ago. And one of the main themes is parenting and how we raise our children. It gets quite dark in the book, and you will hear more about it. But if you, like us, question the impact of the decisions you make, something that we feel is an amazing service to help parents is Bubble, who are kindly sponsoring this episode.
Yes, a huge thank you to Bubble. Bubble, their mission is to empower parents to be the best that they could be, which is something that I think the main character in Yesteryear could really do with, actually.
She could have done with Bubble.
She really could have done with Bubble. She did have 2 nannies and a producer, so she probably needed a bit more. But Bubble are absolutely amazing. There are over 300,000 parents who are signed up to the app. And I actually had a real look at it this week when we were with the Bubble team. And it's so brilliant and so easy to use. I actually found someone I know, not just parents who I know who use the app, but one of the sitters I know really well. And I just found that so reassuring to see, because as a parent, that's what you want. You want the reassurance that you're leaving your kids in great care when you can't be there.
You can see the reviews. You can see reviews from family in the school. You can see ratings, DBS checks. And we are incredibly grateful to them for offering an hour of free childcare for all listeners.
We could all do with that.
I'm definitely going to use it next week. If you go to the show notes, you will see a link to utilise, and that will take you through to their website where the discount will be applied.
Enjoy that. Have a good hour with that.
I know.
And then get some more.
Why this episode is coming out early. So usually we think that our book club episodes will come out at the end of the month. That will be our standard.
Yes.
However, we are both foaming at the mouth to discuss this book critically and positively. And I mean, I think I did in some way pretend to not be feeling well so I could finish it.
Yeah, it's seriously propulsive. Seriously propulsive.
Maybe I should have used the free hour then. But
yes. Sat in your bathroom.
We just felt like we really wanted to provide that discourse, not just summarising, not just our reaction, but a look at the themes, a look at like this through a feminist lens.
Stuff going on online that is massively relevant to this topic as well, and setting it within that wider context, I think, is key.
Absolutely. So that's why it's coming out early. If you're halfway through, enjoy. If you're about to, or if you don't want to read it, but you just want to know what everyone's talking about, listen in.
Are we spoiler free? Because the end is a key part.
We are not spoiler free.
We are not spoiler
We're not spoiler free because I feel like so many people have already read this.
Yeah,
and I am not seeing.
Good to check that before we
Yes.
we get further into this.
You're seeing a really raw, like natural chat with us.
Yes.
I've got 42 pages of notes.
Gosh. Write your thesis.
Well, because it's so.
On Tradwife Life. We will get to that. You may know or may not know, but our book club, which we run every month, is formed with 2 books kind of at the centre. We like to pick a new book, which in this case is Yesteryear. And we also like to pick an old book that we think deserves some extra hype. And this month we chose True Grit by Charles Portis, which is apparently a very well-known and hugely successful film, which I think won John Wayne an Oscar. I had not heard of it. But the reason we chose this book is because we went on a bit of a secret history / Donna Tartt bender, didn't we? When we did our deep dive a few weeks ago.
I love that phrase, a bender.
A bender. That's my kind of bender, okay? We went on down a Donna Tartt rabbit hole because quite frankly, we've realised, and you may know this, that Donna Tartt writes a book every decade, which really isn't enough if you want more Donna Tartt. But one thing she did write was the introduction to True Grit. Now, she has said in interviews that this is one of her favourite books ever. She says so in the introduction too. And we thought this is a great way to get some Donna Tartt in your life without waiting for many more years for her next book, right?
Absolutely. That's what happens when you find an author that you love. Though we've always loved Donna Tartt. When we were doing our research, True Grit came up as inspiration. It very much resonated with her Southern background. The version of True Grit that she gave the introduction for, I think, was a different edition post film, and it sent us down a whole different thing. And actually, there are so many themes that cross over between both books, though I did love the fact that True Grit is so slim. So coming up in this episode, we are going to look at the themes across both quickly, and then we're going to start with Yesteryear. We're going to give you that summary so you can sit in conversations or in cafes and you'll see people reading it and you'll know exactly what they're looking at. Then we're going to look at the reaction quickly online, in publications, etc. And then we're going to give rapid fire thoughts, and then we're going to dive into the themes and critical feminist analysis, which I'm counting down to. I have so much to say. Sophie's going to look at narrative structure and the character of Natalie, and then we're going to go into True Grit and its cultural impact. And you know, it's one of those books that when I was researching, so many very well-known authors reference.
Yeah, and love it. And love
Fascinating. Themes across both, just to have in mind. So you have 2 women that are navigating systems built by men. You've got myth versus reality, surviving harsh worlds, constructing identity through storytelling, and survival, morality, and myth are key here.
Yeah, they are key. I think before we get stuck in to those details, I want to say one of the standout things that you will hear and see and whatever about True Grit is the fact that this novel is creating so much conversation. This is a debut, which is it's really fascinating and inspirational to sit on and watch this happen. Because, you know, you hear so much in the kind of the literary world that breaking out as a debut author is really, really hard.
Very much so.
And to watch Caro Claire Burke literally break through that is incredible. And obviously it's been done with a huge amount of hard work. But I've thoroughly enjoyed watching how much interest and excitement has been generated around this novel. She's appeared on some of the biggest chat shows. She's talking to everybody because everybody wants to talk to her about this book. And I mean, I think that's also because of the context within it, which it is set. You know, I thought when I was researching for this podcast that I'd have a little look online, because it is very closely linked to a number of key influences in this trad wife, which means traditional, generally Christian housewife space online. And this is actually a topic that Caro Burke has talked about for a number of years on her podcast and in various articles. She clearly is fascinated by it, which makes total sense why you'd write a book on it. And you can see her interest. It's really interesting.
But this tradwife phenomenon, and obviously Yesteryear, which we haven't given you the summary, but it is set in that tradwife space. The main protagonist is a tradwife, proudly so. And there are so many real life people and cases
who live that life and portray that life, at least.
Indeed.
I mean, you've got Nara Smith, who is married to that model, Lucky. I mean, I watch their life. I am guilty of it. I watch it. I consume it because I'm just so fascinated. I think they've got a lot of children, maybe 4 or 5.
I find it so performative.
I know, you find it really... but it is performative. It is really performative. Her voice is incredibly soothing. And then, of course, there's Hannah of Ballerina Farm, which she's been really drawn out in a lot of the material to do with Yesteryear. People have said, this is Ballerina Farm, which is a massive farm that's hugely popular online, run by Hannah and her husband.
And everything she makes is natural and raw, and she's making panna cotta with 3 children hanging off her. And she looks like she's had a glam squad.
I watched her make panna cotta. You said, I thought I'll go on for 2 minutes, watch a couple of her videos. I watched her make panna cotta because I didn't follow Ballerina Farm, but I do follow Nara Smith. I watched her make panna cotta, and I think she said it was easy, and it nearly made me want to cry because the one time I tried to make something similar to panna cotta for friends at lunch, it literally turned out like vomit. And it is not true, Hannah. Panna cotta is not easy, and I'm still scarred by my attempt, but she makes it look so easy, which is what Natalie does in the book.
And everything is very curated, and it's very natural aesthetic, and it makes, I think this content, and maybe Hannah doesn't mean to do so, but I think it just makes you feel totally inadequate, and like that anything that is possibly not natural or homemade is making you into a bad parent. I don't like her at all.
But what's fascinating is there obviously is real controversy surrounding some of these figures, and I think that's what has been really tapped into in Yesteryear. That's what the book is about. Like Ballerina Farm, there was the raw milk scandal. It was last year when I think there were traces of some bacteria that can like be linked to E. coli were found in the milk, which is like really that's a big faux pas, isn't it? With your healthy farm and your perfect lifestyle, E. coli in the milk, which actually brings us on to our next sponsor of the show.
Yes, where there is no E. coli.
There is no E. coli.
It's interesting because when we were looking at the themes and Yesteryear as a concept, because it is a concept novel, and then linking it to the real people that we think have clearly inspired it, I was thinking about how the Lux brand that is sponsoring us, London Tropics, like kind of fits in so nicely because it's all about wellness and organic, and it's beautiful, and it's like you could see it being used in so many of these accounts.
But it is legit great, so it works.
There is no controversy with London Tropics. It's just beautiful packaging that encapsulates this wonderful product that Sophie has changed everything about you in terms of your coffee intake.
Well, it's been a product that I've really, really enjoyed using. I mean, I think that, it's adaptogenic coffee, which still contains caffeine. I actually thought initially that, it must not contain caffeine, and that would have put me off massively, but it does. But it also is infused with 2 adaptogens. So there are different types. I love the version called Flow, which contains lion's mane. And I just find it really helps me keep my focus, and I don't have any of those sort of jitters around lunchtime, which I normally do with coffee. And they're a great brand to work with, and what they stand for is brilliant, and they make a great product.
They do. And we have a wonderful code, which is Biblio. So please do check them out. The website is also in our show notes. We were talking about that led us from Ballerina Farm, but I would also point out in the wider context. And I think it's so interesting to then think about the summary. We've done that on purpose. You may think, why are they not telling me what this book is about? But actually, it's actually interesting to think about the world it's been written in. And these are quite American accounts. But Ruby Frank was an influencer on YouTube, Channel 8 Passengers. It was all about wellness and family and parenting. And she is now sitting in prison for the most horrific child abuse.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite incredible. So I think she created the channel in 2015 with her husband. And by 2020, I think there was something like, 2.5 million people were subscribing. But there were instances on that channel that made viewers worry. I think there was one of her children who was about 15, was sleeping. He sort of said something like he'd been made to sleep on a beanbag for 7 months as a form of discipline. One of the 6-year-old daughters had to make her own lunch.
I remember seeing that
Did
clip.
you?
Yes. She was in the car and she was talking about how her child was old enough to prepare her own food, and the school had called and said, your child's starving, she has no food. She's like, I don't care, I'm not bringing it in. You have to understand, I mean, obviously I've dealt with cases of like severe child neglect, but I'm also in my heart a feeder. That's how I give love. And I remember watching it and thinking, I'll go. I'll bring the kid food. Just let me.
And she has, as you said, ended up in prison for her crimes. I mean, it's really there is so much of that in this book.
And her daughter, Shari Frank, has actually written a book called The House of My Mother.
Which I just ordered because I have an illness and can't stop buying books. Help! This is not okay. I hope David doesn't listen to this podcast and I bought another book. But there we go.
But it's such a book that speaks to you.
And, absolutely.
And actually, Ruby Frank, when like her YouTube started declining, didn't she start like a parenting wellness
as some kind of counselor, like with this other woman's who I think has also ended up in prison.
Yes.
So there you go.
And do you know what? This brings us so beautifully to Yesteryear because, and I actually wrote a Substack piece about this, about how
you'll put the link in the bio. Well, not in the bio, sorry, in the show notes. I need to get with it.
That we are comparing ourselves constantly to the people we see online. And we are going to them for advice. We are taking what they say. If they've got a big following, you may take what they say much more seriously. And it could be on a wide nature of topics. And we don't know who these people intrinsically are. And that is at the heart of Yesteryear for me, that performative point of being online.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this whole, and with that is obviously the wider element of social media itself. Having your children on social media, that's a really pivotal part of this book.
Yes.
There are so many big themes that encourage conversation. And I think that is naturally why so many people are talking about this book. So I do take my proverbial hat off to Caro Claire Burke for writing a book that deals with these issues and has generated so much conversation.
And in a clever way, because it is, I do have thoughts on this book. I enjoyed it, but there were things that I will be talking about from a critical space.
Yeah.
But it has been executed well in that sense of the themes that it explores. So what is it about? Yesteryear follows Natalie, a woman who becomes an online sensation through her incredibly carefully curated trad wife persona. You're talking pastoral domesticity, idealized motherhood. She embodies the perfect traditional femininity that attracts millions of followers. They are searching for nostalgia, I think. This throwback.
Six children by 32.
Living in a farm called Yesteryear.
Which she names, I believe.
Yes. Now, as the novel progresses, it goes back and forth, and the gap between her digital identity and her private reality begins to widen. You see the reality of her marriage, the emotional strain. You go back in time to see how she got to where she is. And then there's this shift where she wakes up not knowing where she is.
Yeah.
It ostensibly seems to be the 1800s, and she's living the reality of what she's been portraying, but in a much more visceral way. And the concepts of labor, self-erasure, traditionalism, the psychology of being trapped in that persona is what this book really brings to the forefront. But there's a lot here about feminism, motherhood, and this incredibly crazy world that we live in.
Yeah, I think that sums it up brilliantly. And I think the reactions to it have been fascinating to watch, as fascinating as watching how much Caro Claire Burke has been out there discussing the book and how much interest there is, but the two are obviously interlinked. there are people who have been absolutely obsessed with it, like really rate this as a real 5-star, incredible read. And there have been others who have been disappointed or really flat out not liked this book. And it's really polarizing, which is probably why people are chatting about it so much. And I think you and I have maybe quite different reactions to it on some level.
We absolutely
And I think
do.
that's fine. That's fine. But I think overall, we do see what Caro Claire Burke is doing in terms of the conversation around the book, and like generating that chat has been a positive thing. But there are definitely things that perhaps I preferred, maybe you liked less, and vice versa.
Which we will go into. I think you're absolutely right. She's a very witty writer.
Oh, yeah.
She blends,
and astute.
She
Very
blends
astute.
politics. She blends feminism. She blends relationships very, very well. But I am probably on the side of people that were disappointed. I did read it in one day. So hats off to her again. She kept my attention. And I was shouting at Natalie. I despised the character. And we're going to get into that visceral reaction to characters, which, well done, she achieved. We're going to go to our reactions now. I felt that the ending was rushed. I felt that a lot more could have been done to explore Natalie from an interior perspective. I loved how the roommate that she had in university,
Rena, was that name Rena?
Yes, was used as this linchpin throughout the book for her to consider what modern feminists and a modern woman is doing, and how she kind of tries to justify to herself that she's happier because think about what that woman's going through constantly. I also was quite discombobulated because I genuinely thought it was a time travel novel.
Yes, well, I also did. And that's one of my criticisms of it. So in terms of my own reaction, I really, from the moment I opened it, I felt like I loved it. I really did. And there were structural elements that kind of kept me going because you wanted to understand how had this happened, this sort of seeming time travel, which, you know, made me think, are we going to be in a bit of like time traveler's wife territory? Is she making herself go back to the past? Does one of them have like a power? Like what was this? And then I thought maybe we were in the Truman Show and this was some really messed up reality. When they found the microphone, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the Truman Show. Natalie's going to walk to the edge of the set. She's going to knock on it and realize she's in a like film set and they're all in on it to expose her. But I thought that can't make sense because the stuff happening to her was so brutal that no way would that be televised. But then I thought, hang on, maybe that is the world they are in now, that it is so brutal and can be televised. I was confused. And I think that's why I really kept going.
And the point that is so cleverly made in a very deft way is that it's not that far away from reality.
No, it's not.
That something really dystopian could be televised as a reality show.
And consumed as entertainment. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was what I thought it was. And to be honest, something that frustrated me because, as I said, there was a lot of the book that I did love. What frustrated me, and what's frustrating me now, is that I can't quite recall how and why I thought this, but I had felt that in material around this book, it said she woke up in that period of time, which was the 1850s. She had woken up in that time period. So that's what I thought was happening. And I just wanted to know like why or how, but the point was I had been led to believe that it was time travel of some kind. Then you realize it's not. And I thought, they've actually sort of spun this as a time travel book when it's not. And I don't know if anyone had spun it as that or it was just my mind assumed that, but I felt a bit frustrated that it perhaps wasn't.
Yeah, I was waiting for the crescendo and then, okay, so forward this if you don't want a spoiler, but in reality, what happens is she's basically had some form of psychosis.
Yeah, it seems that way.
They've kind of run off.
The older children, are
living around them,
but live nearby. And they've had these other children who like bear a resemblance to those older children. Clementine.
It's all very surreal. There's a real surreal quality to it because I've read this book and I'm like, I'm still not quite sure how they got to that point. It's never fully explained.
Well, because it also did feel a little rushed. I think we both agree on that part. But I think we should talk about Natalie because she is the key character at the heart of this book. Yeah. And one of the when you listen to other interviews about this, one of the things that comes up a lot is that Natalie is very dislikable. And I believe that's what you felt.
I wanted to punch that bitch in the face.
And that is not, by the way, a bad thing. A lot of the greatest books, none of the characters
I literally
are
have a
likable.
stack.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
And that's fine. Like Wuthering Heights, they're also toxic. Like if you look at some of the greatest books ever, you're not going to necessarily like any of the characters. So that's fine. What I would say is that I actually found myself coming away from this quite differently. Didn't love Natalie. I don't think you're supposed to. I don't, but I really had some sympathy for Natalie, especially at the start, her relationship with her own mother.
So I'm going to cut in here to explain. So Natalie is raised in this home. Her mother is ferociously religious, but very pernicious in the way that she talks to her girls. Because Natalie
She's a
has
single
sister.
mother.
She's a single mother. Natalie is always built up to have to achieve more. And there's the most horrific scene that will demonstrate to you the type of woman that has raised her when she has given birth in hospital and she is feeling so out of sorts. Natalie has given birth to her first child. Her mother says to her, why don't you just go for a run to fix your mental health concerns, because you've just had a child with a guy that is a disaster. Her husband is Caleb and he's like, an alternate Kennedy, but the worst type of Kennedy, the idiot. And she's been swept up in the wealth and the excitement. And then she's had this baby with this toddler.
Yeah.
And
he's a moron.
So disconcerted. And her mother goes, just go for a run, which she does. Because she's so desperately trying to please the woman that she ends up hurting herself physically. That is the type of woman that has raised her.
Yes. And I had definitely had sympathy for Natalie. I found Natalie to be genuinely funny at some points in this book. And I know other people have said the same. I couldn't bear Caleb. Like, honestly, I found, I actually really did feel for her when, she got swept up in this relationship with him. He's from this very sort of prestigious family, at least on the surface, which actually when you think about it, the whole life that him and his family portrayed was quite similar to what ended up with Natalie and how she portrayed a certain life and then got completely trapped in it. But, he's basically an absolutely loaded, has the ambition of an ant and actually can't get it up, which is another problem because she ends up having to have loads of children with this guy. How's she going to do it? Well, we learn that the turkey baster does come out, ladies. I mean, it's pretty cringe, isn't it? The whole thing.
And the question is whether she's a victim of cultural expectations or a participant in perpetuating them. She does profit considerably from domestic perfection and the feminine softness, but she also controls those aesthetics.
Yes.
And
I just want to say, I also respect her in that way. I loved the way she went to Caleb's dad and she was like, look at your son. And I'm sort of stuck with him because they're not going to get divorced. These are good Christian people. There's no divorce happening here. And she sort of sussed out what could work for Caleb, went to his father, this almost to be a great politician, and was like, listen, we need this farm. It's going to cost X million. Sort us out. And I thought, you know what? Like, kind of admire her.
She's got gumption.
She has real gumption.
She has gumption. I think a lot of her mindset is so troubling because it's very well argued. She's not someone vacuous who is espousing Christian moral beliefs and traditions, and she's not judging women for being promiscuous, etc., without having a little more depth to her to justify those thoughts, which is what makes her such an interesting character to tease out these themes. Because sometimes I found myself agreeing with her in some ways. And I was like, I don't want to agree with someone like this. This is nothing like I would want to be. And I think that's very, very clever. But she also obviously goes into this influencer culture of like the exploitation of people.
Yes. And obviously the whole irony being that it's through Caleb and that kind of conspiracy theory culture online, like his obsession with chemtrails in the sky, like looking up at, well, they're lines that appear out of airplanes, but he's convinced that it's the government pouring chemicals down on people below. But it's that awful online conspiracy culture that actually makes Natalie famous. That's what gets her the traction, is that it's Caleb's people online who suddenly start posting and sharing, and then suddenly what becomes, she goes from about 10, 20, 100 likes to millions and millions and millions, and everybody's talking. And it's divisive chatter, but ultimately that's what garners interest, isn't it?
It absolutely is. That commodification of tradition, but in that very divisive sense, is such a key point. So you've got Natalie like through college, but then also while she's married, she's trying to create content. She's utilizing her children in the most uncomfortable of ways. She's looking for a producer.
Which, by the way, I think is so important. I love how Caro Burke brings those issues to the fore, because actually your kids, so many influencers shove their kids in the camera. Like, they have no say in that. And there's nothing to protect them. And that is a huge problem. And I think she portrays that brilliantly in this book.
She does. There's a scene where they're like, smile, you will smile. And it's that performative aspect of just our lives, even just for pictures for our own sake. Like, everyone smile, everyone look presentable. Yeah. But then, I'm just going to say, as on a little tangent, I have called out people and gone to them because I have gone through all that safeguarding training, and where these pictures end up, it's really not a joke. Forget the consent question, forget the safety question. You are filming your child in the bath or on the beach, and you don't think there's an issue. There could be an issue. And it's just
awful.
It's such a problem. And it's interesting because it's touched upon. It's touched upon here because she's looking at her girls and almost placing them as how she could use them in that sense, or a bit like a Kardashian.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Yeah. There's that Kardashian-esque vibe.
Kris Jenner, the momager.
So that is a bit about Natalie as a character. She is such a central figure. In fact, this is a book with one character at its heart. Yeah. There is no one else that comes close to her importance in terms of like her position.
They're all just sort of, I felt like they were all sort of tangential to her, and they all exist in their relationship to her and their impact on her life. That's how I felt.
I agree. From a feminist lens, Bell Hooks talks about the fact that patriarchy is sustained not only by men, but actually it's by internalization. It's the women policing themselves. This book has had a huge impact on women coming from a cult or extremely religious background. Caro Burke actually shared a Substack from a woman that had escaped from some sort of severe religious cult. And she talked about that inner policing, that the brilliance of extreme religions is that they actually get you to a point, and they get their followers to a point where the rules don't matter because they're so internalized that you've taken them. And she is such a product of that.
Oof. Yes, she is. She totally is. I mean, faith's such a big part of this story.
It is. So the Bell Hooks point, the internalization is really important. So Hooks' critique in feminist theory from margin to center talks about liberation as blocks when women confuse choice within oppressive structures with actual freedom.
I love that.
And don't you think that is Natalie? Because she does have choice.
She does have choice.
But she doesn't feel free.
No, she is never free.
Do you know why she is never free? Because of that internalized God voice that she espouses constantly.
Yes, to herself.
To herself.
And it's also that brilliant scene when I want to find it. I think I did write it down. It's when she asks her own mother how her mother is so good at everything.
Yes.
I love that. Like, in the house, Mum, how did you do everything? And her mum said, I just pretend someone is watching me. And then she likened that watcher, our original watcher audience is God.
Yes.
I felt that was really profound.
I found that Burke complicated this concept with the fact that Natalie is so aware of the performative aspect. That's why I didn't feel sorry for her, because I have engaged with people that are, exceptionally religious, and, it's that concept of the cave and like happiness. And do you know what happiness is if you're like trapped in your prison and you don't know reality? Yeah. But actually, Natalie is not a victim of that internalized patriarchy and the inner voice of religiosity, because she utilizes it to her own gains.
Well, that's one of the things that I think what I loved about the book, and it relates, I suppose, to structure, is that the book is in, initially when I thought about it, it was 2 parts, but actually it's very much 3, because you've got the present, then you've got how she got there, and then you've got the future. And I personally found myself wanting to always go back to the how she got there, to the past. I wanted those sections.
I agree.
That's where my interest primarily lay, like hearing about how this character was formed. And, you know, for me, I thought that section, that strand of the narrative was brilliant. I found the other 2, I suppose when you look at the future, that's where I found it was, as I said, a little bit rushed.
Oh, hugely.
But she built an incredible character, I think.
She did. And I agree with you. I enjoyed the formative years most because it reminded me of Andrea Dworkin, who looked at the recognition as complicity under domination. So Dworkin often argued that patriarchal femininity is not just imposed, but erotically and socially internalized, and it becomes self-reinforcing. And the novel's treatment of motherhood and her mother and how she then internalizes the concepts of mother and what it means to parent really reminded me of what Dworkin talks about in terms of that. It's just not only the theological engagement and the moral theatre, the theatre of morality. I mean, not being funny, can we just talk about Erica Kirk?
Whoa, that's a lot. I mean, yes, in what sense?
There's such crossovers here.
Oh, yes. I
You've got someone going through a trauma, and I'm not going to comment on someone who's going through a horrific loss.
No.
But if you watch, Erica Kirk is the wife of the deceased Charlie Kirk, who was obviously, as many millions of people will know, was a very important Trump proponent, very important politically, who was assassinated. And the backlash to her going to Turning Point USA conferences and his memorial, and it looks like...
The memes are insane.
And it looked... The Drewski.
Oh, yes, yes.
Serialization.
Yes, the fireworks.
The club night. And it's like this moral theatre, like it's... I am obsessed with this kind of stuff.
No, I also think it's something that for us we're UK based. It's like this. It's very American in that way. We can't really understand it here. We can dip into it and we see it online, whether it's memes, reels, whatever. It's so different to, I guess, typically British behaviours, I think. It's so different.
It absolutely is.
But she's had so much backlash, Erica Kirk.
She has. And so what it made me think of is, you know, like I'm on my algorithm, sometimes I have these hilarious comedic takes of these churches where it's like a theatre and they're doing painting and people are crying and fainting and weeping and there's a choir and there's a production team.
Yes.
And it's hysterical.
Yes.
But then it kind of feeds into this that she sees. I felt that Natalie saw her life as that theatre.
The stage. Her life was this stage that she is kind of the main part. But I think when you mention the motherhood aspect, I have read and seen people discuss it and say that they felt it was glossed over. And I actually disagree with that. And I think, I just want to find this point. I thought the scene where Natalie becomes a mum, I thought that it was done brilliantly. This moment where, you know, she's just had the baby, and this moment, just before, look, in the instant before my daughter came screaming into the world, I felt for the second time in my life a debilitating certainty of the wrongness of the situation. Mama, I thought. Who is Mama? I'm Natalie. My name is Natalie. I was not ready to be a mother. I felt this certainty in the deepest parts of my body, and so it seemed inevitable that he, as in God, would intervene before this mistake of parenthood developed further. I thought that's massive, and I don't think she glosses over that at all. I think actually the way that motherhood was spoken about in this really raw way, I don't know, I really was like, wow, like, that's really, it stayed with me, I suppose is my point.
I love that you read that out, because the loss of identity that she grapples with is so key here.
And I think that is actually this point that you make, that loss of identity is actually done brilliantly. And I think that is probably why I am not someone who hated Natalie. I actually felt sorry for her. And I think a lot of us can relate to that loss of identity once you become a mum. Like, who are you? And you're dealing with, like, this new person in your life, and your whole life suddenly switches from ultimately yourself to others. She had 6 kids by the age of 32. Someone pointed out online that she had 6 kids by the age of 32, and 33 was when Jesus himself died. And that is a relevant point. Caro Claire Burke commented after this point was made that it had never been made before, but it was indeed relevant, almost like Natalie is this kind of a messianic figure.
It's interesting.
There's so many layers when you go into it.
There's a multitude of layers. The loss of identity is really important. It felt like she was on a conveyor belt, and she grappled with that because she sometimes wanted to jump off. And when she was in college and she was seeing all the different lives that people were going to be leading, and she looked at women working 70, 80 hours and leaving their children behind and not, what are you achieving and what's the point? It's like, well, what's the point for you? You don't even like your kids.
No, you don't like your kids.
You just think this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, a comparative text that has come out that is hugely of note at the moment is Belle Strangers, which is non-fiction, and it's the story of a woman from a very prestigious family in America whose husband just in COVID leaves and does not want to have the kids.
And in COVID, how awkward.
And she's been on Oprah. It's been fascinating to see.
It's been an Oprah pick.
It's like the forensic analysis of divorce. But people have been reading both together and saying how Yesteryear externalizes patriarchy and Strangers internalizes it through marriage,
really interesting.
Wealth, and emotional labor.
Wow.
Belle Burden is obviously the caregiver because she's the woman, and she loses her entire identity when she gets married. Her career, everything. Fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
The classic feminist tension between false consciousness and structural deception is so important. Yeah, Hook says something interesting about imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, and I'm so sorry, but that's all Yesteryear made me think about.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're so privileged.
Yes, they are so privileged. And I mean, you've got this incredibly privileged family that she's married into, and then they essentially control, and she works within that control to get what she wants.
And by the way, that's something that people are saying about Belle Burden's Strangers as well. That as horrific the story is and how relatable as it is, and it speaks to so many women, the fact is that she was in her summer home in Martha's Vineyard with all the resource that she could possibly have ever needed. And it's
I don't
different.
need a summer home at Martha's Vineyard, but I do maintain I do still want Nara Smith's Magimix. Like, I really, really want it. I'm putting it on my wish list for my next birthday. It's
Please
so beautiful.
Not
£900. Oh no, it's a KitchenAid artisan mixer.
I love KitchenAid.
With the wooden bowl. That is what I want.
We're going to go to True Grit, but we're going to connect them. I mean, there's so much more to be said about Yesteryear in terms of the pastoral nostalgia, clean girl domesticity, performative, like aesthetic.
There's so much more we could say on social media, but we have to stop. Otherwise, no one will carry on.
But this point is that as a debut, there's a reason why it's spoken to the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and really well done.
As much as I would have wanted different things from it, I would have so much more wanted more formative years. I would have wanted a lot more exploration about why she ended up there, what happened.
Yeah, my main
children
criticism
treatment
was this whole thinking it was definitely a time travel book, and it wasn't. But it's proper propulsive. I don't think it would take anybody long to read this book. And I think it's well worth a read, just to kind of join in the conversation if you want to. And if you don't want to read it, please lift anything we've said here and feel free to claim it as your own. That's what we're here for.
And sounds so clever doing it.
That's your stuff to walk in.
ChatGPT can add more stuff.
I'll stick with the KitchenAids. So we paired Yesteryear with Charles Portis's True Grit, which is a really, I loved it. It's a Western story, and it's not something I would have ever picked up had it not been for our book club. So I hope that goes the same for some of you. This is narrated by 14-year-old Mattie Ross, who is, I just think, an absolutely brilliant character. Sharp and determined. She is living in post-Civil War Arkansas. Her dad gets murdered by a drifter called Tom Chaney, and she is absolutely determined to avenge his murder and bring the killer to justice all by herself. So she refuses to rely on the adults around her, and she finds Rooster Cogburn, who is a US Marshal. He's getting a bit older, and she wants him on side to help her avenge her father's death. And that is this book in a nutshell. And I have to tell you, for me, the opening of this is akin to the opening in A Secret History.
That's a lot to be said.
I really think it is so brilliant. And I just want to read out the beginning because I think it really sums up who Mattie Ross is. People do not give it credence that a 14-year-old girl could leave home and go off in the wintertime to avenge her father's blood. But it did not seem so strange then, although I will say it did not happen every day. I just love the deadpan humour of this book. And that's what I think is such a kind of positive about it, is that it deals with some really gruesome things. There are scenes in there that will haunt me, but it is so funny in the most deadpan of ways. And I really enjoyed reading it. I really enjoyed reading something that I would not normally have picked up. And I'm really glad to say I have read it, not in a performative way. But I think I've read a real classic with a character, Mattie Ross, and I love Rooster too. They've become some of my favourite characters ever. So I love that.
It's so interesting because when I was looking at this book, Mattie Ross comes up as one of as a favourite character on like so many
Finn.
lists.
Yes.
And I when I was reading it, I was thinking, this is Pippi Longstocking for plus 18. As in, it's kind of that vibe, but in an adult tone. So she's this like proto-feminist figure. She's not liberated femininity, but she's adopting a masculine rationality. But she suppresses her emotional display. Like it's that wit, it's that sardonic humor that she has.
And this subversion of her age and gender roles, because ultimately she's a 14-year-old girl who's going out to get what she wants.
Yes.
She's not going to stop at anything before she does it.
It's a bit of a time warp book. Within a page, I was not in London. I was in Southern America in her time, not thinking about phones or emails, because she's such an unusual voice. And the story is so unusual. This girl trying to claim revenge against her dead father, and just the time that it portrays was so powerful.
Yes. And she's reflecting. So it's important to note that Mattie is speaking to us from the future, reflecting on what has happened. So we know she's going to be okay.
Yes.
But we don't know how she's got to where she's got, and obviously what's happened.
She's in Civil War, Arkansas. Her father's murdered by a drifter. She's setting out to get justice. And there's this US Marshal that struggles with like brutality, alcoholism, and
I mean, he's hilarious. I want to watch I actually do want to see the film
This
now.
Texas Ranger is such a strong character. In fact, I would say as strong as Mattie is, the side characters are really important here. Whereas with Whereas with Yesteryear, I didn't feel the same way. The side characters were very important in creating Natalie and influencing who she becomes. But here,
they're standalone
Grit,
here.
They're standalone.
And actually, one obvious point is clearly we both loved Mattie much more than we did Natalie. But also what's such an amazing thing at the heart of this book is that relationship between Mattie and Rooster. Because it's like this unlikely yet hugely iconic duo, the pair of them.
Yeah.
And I would love to see how that's represented in film. I have such a picture of them in my head. And what's also brilliant about this, I mentioned Donna Tartt. Obviously, this was one of her favourite books ever. But if you go and listen to any Donna Tartt narrates the audiobook, which actually would make me want to listen to an audiobook, which I've never done, but that's a discussion for another time. But I read this with Donna Tartt's voice in my head, and it totally enhanced the experience for me because her Southern drawl is, quite frankly, poetic. It really is. It's just divine, and I could hear that. That's the voice that read me this book.
I think the novel transcends the theme of revenge. It becomes about justice, courage, morality, survival in a lawless landscape.
The landscape is a character.
Absolutely.
In the same way that I think it's much more so in here than Yesteryear in terms of the obvious landscape. Yes. But both of the main protagonists in both books are actually navigating incredibly harsh landscapes around them.
Yes.
I mean, in Yesteryear, obviously in the present, which as in the part where she's time traveled but hasn't time traveled, as you'll see.
Yes.
She is living a really hard life, having to work with the land around her.
And being abused.
And being
seriously abused.
Yeah. I mean, trigger warning, serious.
True Grit represents that endurance for me. Like Mattie is that, she embodies like that perspicacity and also persistence. It's considered an American classic, and
I totally get why.
do you?
I do, because it's so American, and I think it's the deadpan humor, but the morality at the heart of the story,
And it's absurdist. Like, it's absurdist in some ways, the bureaucracy that they have to
and
face.
the violence. Oh my gosh, the violence when those fingers are chopped off. That I'm not going to go into it too much, but there is stuff that is really violent that stayed with me because it is pretty gruesome, but yet it's combined with that humor that kind of makes it okay.
Yes,
and you're always rooting for them. You're rooting for them.
Well, how normal people can be persuaded that bad things are justified.
Yeah, and at the end, well, when we are spoiling it, but when Mattie suffers a serious injury, she is the one who kills Cheney, and then she falls into a snake pit and is really severely wounded by a snake bite, which leads to her arm being amputated, and Rooster carrying her like after she's injured. It's just, I don't know, I thought they're a beautiful pairing. They really are.
I love how you use the phraseology beautiful when you're dealing with something so
gruesome,
horrific.
I know, but they're a beautiful pairing, the two of them.
Tart says that this book succeeds because it's both mythic and intensely human. It's a portrait of loneliness and emotional endurance. And this is a book, as we said, that so many contemporary writers will randomly reference. Jonathan Franzen, George Saunders has praised the eccentricity, and it's become recognised as almost a defining novel of the 20th century because it reinvents a national myth.
Yeah, and it's this the blasé view is what Donna Tartt describes, the blasé view of what is happening at the time. I mean, these are really, as I said, like gruesome things, but actually it's just kind of filtered in such a way that kind of makes it okay to read. I just thought it was brilliant. She writes, shootings, stabbings and public hangings are recounted frankly and flatly, and often with rather less warmth than the political and personal opinions upon which Mattie digresses. Just like, oh well.
Yeah.
And it's often funny but unintentionally. And I think that's what makes it so clever.
Yes. I'm so glad that we chose it because it's something we would never have come across. I definitely wouldn't have. It's only because I had done that research into Donna Tartt and said to you, oh my God, this is one of her favourite books. Have you read it?
But I think they do work together.
They really do.
With these strong female protagonists. And actually an interesting point to make before we close is this obviously was a hugely successful movie. And Yesteryear has been optioned by Anne Hathaway, who was an instrumental part in the finishing of the book. So take from that what you will, because some have said that they feel that it's meant that the book was kind of written for film. But I mean, Anne Hathaway, she is such a busy woman at the moment. I don't know how she's doing all this, but she's going to play Natalie in the movie. So I'm definitely seeing that.
Yeah,
definitely.
But that's the thing. I would want to watch it.
Totally. I'd want to watch it. And these are both books. Honestly, if you haven't read them, you will come away and I guarantee you will be thinking about both of them. Whether you loved them or didn't love them, you will be thinking about the issues that they raise. Given that we know that we didn't give you very much time on this book because we were so desperate to talk about it, sorry. I think it was more you than me.
It was me.
Yeah, it was me. Chaya's fault. Blame Chaya. We are going to pause and let you know our book club picks for next month. So that is June. How are we choosing books for June? Where has the year gone? All of that stuff. We'll be mentioning them on our next episode and on our Instagram, right?
Yes.
And on Substack and on all other platforms available.
Because we are like Anne Hathaway. We're everywhere doing everything.
Everywhere.
Because apparently women have to be mothers, bakers, content creators, CEOs.
Yeah, that's casual.
Burnt out.
Yeah,
okay?
Chaya's done a lovely Substack about that.
It's eloquently titled, I Am Overwhelmed, because I just think, what else is there to say?
But yes, so make sure you stay tuned for those because they are going to be great picks. We've also got a really, really, really exciting author interview coming out.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that. We're very
Live
excited.
and fresh from the Oscars. That's our one clue. Thank you for listening.
See you next time.